The internet loves to talk about war. Not necessarily all the killing and shooting and gassing and bombing. Sure, some of them do like to talk about that. Talking about war means talking about history, and history is important to talk about. You want to talk about moments that changed the course of history? Well, there are ones that were not war, that didn't involve killing, but they are generally boring. Like I read this book, Children of Light by Gavin Waitman? Waitman. Sounds like a superhero whose power is to gain weight. Anyway, it's about the development of the electrical grid in Britain and how that aided and was aided by the Industrial Revolution. And it's very important. A lot of research went into it, and it's actually a really pivotal moment in history. It helped Britain remain a world power much longer than it would have if they didn't put a lot of resources into this development. But I do appreciate your work, but the brain wants action, and war provides action. Would you rather read a book about Roman politics or a book about how they developed the tactics for fighting elephants? So this communal tendency among history buffs to focus history through the lens of war, a bad thing. I'd say it's at least a little bit unbalanced, but it's hard to deny that most of history is war. It's what was worth writing down when they were recording their histories, and it's what made their history happen. It's how empires are built, how political systems change oftentimes, and it's the logical results of movements or results in the birth of movements. So much of what we as humans have done, unfortunately, orbits around killing each other. So it's not a total surprise then that people who like talking about history tend to talk a lot about war. And sometimes all that heavy stuff about politics and death tolls and civilian casualties gets a little heavy. And we do what people do when they want to lighten the mood. We meme. So that leads us to our topic today, the internet phenomenon of meme wars. Wars which have become punchlines. The classic of these, and the first one that I became aware of, was the Emu War. I made this picture here for a previous discussion of that on a Long Dead podcast. The basic story was that in the 30s in Australia, the government said, we have too many emus, too many of these guys living on land that we intend to give to soldiers who are going to be farming this land after World War I. So they just sent out 3 soldiers, and they said, here you go, here's some guns, here's some bullets, here's a truck. Clear them out, get rid of them, as many as you can. But they failed to kill very many at all, and they lost the truck in the process. It kind of led to politicians at the time mocking the effort, because, that's what you do. You score cheap political points when something that your opponent doesn't work. One of those cheap political point scoring moments went a little something like this. You think we should give out medals for the Emu War? Probably, but I don't think the emus would take them. So that was all well and fun, and now the internet has sort of rediscovered it, and it's become something that you get to make fun of Australians for, because obviously we don't have enough to make fun of them for already. The problem with turning a war into a joke, though, is when it trivializes something that's actually quite harmful. For example, you have something like the Cod War, where British fishing boats were trying to fish in waters that Iceland said belonged to them. So the Icelandic Navy, which consisted of a few rented boats, tried to harass them and cut their nets and make them feel quite unwelcome. So then Britain decided to send out some of their navy. And that was a bit of an escalation of things, and then they started shooting at each other and ramming each other, and in all the excitement, one of the engineers actually died. It's human life cut short over fishing rights. That's senseless. There is a way that you can use humor to draw attention to serious issues. I'd like to think that that's what I've done so far with the videos that I've made. But humor can also draw attention away from serious issues. When we talk about the absurd elements of something like the Cod War, we lose focus on the lessons we could be learning. Like how people lost their life for something that more powerful individuals could have easily negotiated. And by the way, this dispute was ended by negotiations. Or you think of something like the Chaco War, which has elements that are so crazy, it's kind of funny to an outside observer. This was a war between Paraguay and Bolivia, two landlocked states in South America, and it was over a pretty small scrap of land that they were baited into fighting over because they were both led to believe that there were significant amounts of natural gas and oil on that land. People died fighting over a mineral that was only ever going to make a select few wealthy. And the really bad thing here, and the thing that kind of put the war on the map as far as further discussion goes, is that Dutch Royal Shell, a company with connections to Paraguay, and Standard Oil, who had extensive dealings with Bolivia, may have had some impact on influencing the governments to go to war with each other. If that is true, and there isn't a lot of documentation to support that, but if it is true, that would make this sort of a corporate proxy war in South America in the 1920s. But even the suggestion is, the real irony of the whole thing is that Paraguay, who won the war, they were awarded the majority of the territory that was being fought over, has not been able to extract very much oil at all from that region. It wasn't until almost 80 years after the war that they were even able to find anything worth taking out. Upwards of 50,000 Paraguayan soldiers died over almost nothing. That was almost 3% of their male population just gone over a nonsense conflict. And yet, with all the elements showing how terrible that is, the tendency of the internet is to mock. The big players get all the attention, so the victims of this tragic circumstance aren't really discussed. Because the reality is, war is complicated, and complicated things are hard to joke about. Sure, there's humor that could be mined from it. Soldiers are some of the first to laugh about their experiences. I remember listening to an interview with a guy that was at D-Day, and he just kept chuckling about it, because he was aware of the absurdity of his situation. But I guess my point is that whether the war seems to be over something trivial or something significant, the results are the same. Dead people, ruined lives, trauma, hatred, societal scars that might not heal for generations. And I'm not gatekeeping here over what can and can't be joked about. I'd just rather that instead of just mining these conflicts for humor, we could actually look and learn a lesson from them about human nature, about greed, about, well, whatever it is that more serious wars have taught us. Thank you for sitting through this brief rant. Please remember, as always, to check out my website, jasperhudson.com. That has more ways that you can support what I do, other than liking and commenting and sharing and all the things us annoying guys who spend time on camera are always asking you to do. And also, I have a book on Amazon. I'm not sure how well you can see it on camera, but it's on this screen here, Ireland's Forgotten County, A Guide to Donegal. It's a brief guide, and it's written in this voice, so if you like the video, you'll probably like the book.